Guess what's coming up on this episode of Genera Gems? Features, features, features. Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Genera Gems. I'm excited about this one because what we're going to do today is we're going to show some new features as it relates to Genera 7.2. So this is exciting stuff. What Igor and I are going to do is we're going to walk through the list, and he's going to demonstrate for that particular one how it works and where you can find it. So let's just dive right into it. Igor, why don't you share your screen, and we'll read off the list, and then we'll walk through this.
Yeah, this is for, making sure that everyone is aware what new features are out there with Genera, especially with Genera 7.2 recently releasing.
Yes, and you can also find these in the release notes, as you can see on the screen here. And what we'll do is we'll just go through this automatically. So let's see what's new right off the list. Decision node support added to the imaging edition of Genera. So Igor, why don't you explain or where we can find the additions of Genera, and then I can explain a little bit about Decision Node and what it obviously does.
Yeah, so you could see all the additions. If you don't have Genera, we could send it to you if you're interested. We have a whole PDF that explains all of our additions. But if you do have Genera and interested about what the additions are and what you're allowed to do with each edition, you go into the user guide. And right at the getting started, if you scroll down just a little bit, you can see our additions here. And if we go to the decision node, as you can see if I highlight this all across, we have our light, standard, pro, and imaging. And for decision nodes, before it wasn't allowed in imaging, but it is now. So we can see checkboxes for standard, pro, and imaging, but it's not allowed in light.
Yes, exactly. And decision nodes basically allows you to create a true false branching within an actual process. So you can run operations within a true branch if the evaluation turns to true, and false in a specific other operations in that branch as well. So that's available in 3 of the 4 editions of Genera.
And this is all based off of user feedback. So people have been asking to add decision nodes into imaging. And so we listened and added it in because it's very important for imaging processes.
Yes. All right. Next, the load and unload movement types for Move Labware nodes.
So let's go to our editor. Let's go to a process. So this is where we can actually see that. And if we go to our Move Labware, add that into any part of our process, we could see that we have our typical move. So this is just moving from your source location to your destination location. And we have all our other ones like delidding, lidding, move and read barcodes. So this is all in here before 7.2. But now we could see we have 2 more, which is load and unload. So if I was to click on unload, for example, it'll unload it from the location from your Labware node that you specified, or you could load it to a destination. So let's say I have a plate in my STX 110 nest and I wanted to load it into the Hotel 1 of the STX. We could add that in there.
Yeah, you can think of those load and unloads are more methods related to the Move Labware control node. And those are all methods under there that allow you to do things with robots. So that's what that's basically doing there. All right.
Yeah, so it's to expand our functionality of the Move Labware, because there won't be any load or unload in our activity nodes. That's how we previously did it, but now we've put it all in one location, similar to what we're doing with the Move Labware node with the robot arms.
Exactly. It's all centralized. All right, now the next one. This was kind of cool. Scheduling wizard, system setup step. This is kind of cool because this gives the user the ability to set the stage, if you will, for the actual process run in schedule time.
Yeah. So before, if I wanted to schedule a process, I would have to add my Labware before I actually schedule it. But now, let's say I'm going to schedule it without adding any Labware or forgot to add Labware. And I'm going to just redo my free trial process here. validating. If I click next, go through all of these configurations, as we can see that there's a system setup now, and I could see my layout. So before this wasn't here, and now I could add labware to wherever I want to. I could remove labware wherever I want to. It's just a nice way so that I don't have to, if I forget to add labware, delete or cancel this, go back to the workspace, and then reschedule it. You could set it up from here.
Yeah, this is kind of the court of last resort to get everything set up. And this may be a lot of benefit for other users to just say, I'm going to rely on this screen during the schedule. So instead of clicking by it, you can kind of go, why is this workspace here? Well, it's for your benefit. So you can, again, set the stage for how your process is actually going to run.
Yep, so let's go to the next one.
All right. Encrypted instrument properties. This was a big request, or not a demand, but a big request from a customer as it relates to logging in to specific instruments. Some may have it, some don't, but this was something that we needed to address, and we did so.
Especially with instruments that have passwords associated to them.
Yes,
So you can
exactly.
see here that for the Fluent, you have to enter in a username and password. So before, Genera wouldn't have encrypted the password, so anybody using the system could see the password just through here, or they could see it within our XML config files where we save this information. So if I drag that in here, so this is the Fluent XML. So this is kind of underneath the hood. And so a lot of IT departments didn't like that we were exposing the password for instrument properties. So, but now you could see that it is encrypted. So you can't find out what the value is for password in this XML file. And as you can see for the username, it's set here. So you could see the username, which is fine. Or you could encrypt this as well by just putting an encryption tag to it. So any properties now or any parameters for an instrument could now be encrypted.
Yeah, and that's cool because if it's originally not encrypted, like you said, you can put the encrypted tag in front of that username in the XML, and now it will have the the periods encryption in the actual parameters there. What's next on the list? I'm excited. Okay, this will cover two birds with one stone. So we have robotic arm path movement actions and path item comments. They're in the same location or the same area, but we're going to cover them both at the same time. So this is kind of cool. Check this out.
Yep, so let's go to our robotic arm teaching, which is in our editor workspace. And now we are at a path. So we are in our flex-1-nest. This is our OpenTrons Flex nest. And as we can see, for all safe and approaches, we have a movement type. So this is the first comment there in our release notes. And we can see that there's a read barcode movement action.
So what will happen here is that approach one, the read barcode action will take place every time at approach one for this nest position. So the robot, if it's triggered with an IntelliGuide, I'm talking about a Brooks robot now, if it's triggered with its own camera, it will now at approach one read the barcode. So every time it goes through approach one, it'll read that particular barcode. So that's the movement action. Where are the movement path comments? I think are right next to that.
So it's right next to it. So that's why we discussed them both at the same time. And so now I could add comments to each of my move types. So here I could say this is, approach one to the OpenTrons Flex. And so this is just helpful for other users. So if I was to do the teaching and I want other users to know what this approach does, I can now add comments to it. And I can also add comments to I did not save it. So I think I need
You have to hit enter when you do that.
OpenTrons Flex approach one. Click enter. There we go.
There you go.
So now you have to click enter. And now other users could see that this is the OpenTrons Flex approach one, or I could say, nest here, or whatever else would be helpful for other users who are teaching this robot, but I did the physical teaching this time around.
Yeah, and because you can't change the type in this column set here in this table, Somebody doesn't know where is approach one. If I go there, am I going to hit something on the way? You don't know. Here on the comment side, on the other side of this table, you can get a little more verbose and describe where it actually is, which is kind of nice. So what do we got next here? All right, we've got workspace node name normalization.
So now it enforces the naming rules. So before, when I was to add a layout to my workspace, so if I was to click add, and if I now, so let me double check. Workspace, no, oh no, sorry, it's not the layout, it's the actual nodes.
Yes.
So if I was to drag in like a nest, for example, you can see it defaults to a value, but if I had it empty and I try to add it in, it now has this invalid node name. So before 7.2, you were able to add empty ones or duplicates. So if I tried to add, I believe I had dispenser -1, as you can see, I already have it in. If I try to add this nest, it'll say a node named dispenser1 already exists. So
No
just to
duplicates.
avoid some issues that could happen by having nodes with no names or dispensers with with nodes with the same names.
Yeah, because if you tell a robot, go to dispenser one, and you did put that one in there and it was called dispenser one with no instrument association, well, it doesn't know where it's going to go. It's going to pick one. It doesn't know exactly which one you're telling it. They're both named the same thing. So now that it enforces those rules, which is kind of cool.
And
All right,
also
now,
it does trimming names, so it trims
mhm.
any leading and trailing white spaces. So if you were to accidentally add spaces in the beginning or add spaces at the end, it'll trim those off, which is really nice. Just in case you
Yes.
forget that you just accidentally click the space bar when after adding the name.
Next one on the list, applications logs. Now, Igor and I both know that looking through logs can be a real pain in the, well, you know
Mhm.
where. This really, really helps out from a diagnostics perspective. So, Igor, take this one away.
Yeah, if you go to the tools menu in the bottom left, in the top right, there's a logs tab now in 7.2. And
Nice.
so logs can be filtered based off of events or applications. So we're going to primarily look at events. So you could set a start time and an end time. So this is just a 1 day of logs. And you could filter based off of messages, based off of event types, or based off of properties. So you can see that we have all event types, but if you just want to look at users, you can. If you just want to look at the workspace changes, you can. But I'm going to focus primarily on properties because this gives you very much a fine-tuned way of looking at certain aspects of logs in your system. So one that we think is quite useful is based off of user. So if I want to see what my admin has done with the system, I could update, and as we could see that once it's finished updating, there we go. So now we can see that the type is all users and the message is all based off the admin. So if
So,
I
what you're
go to
saying, I think what you're saying here is you can't hide from me anymore. I know what
exactly.
admin has done. I know what all the users have done. But this is important because if there's some sort of an issue, let's say you have a role called user and you have people who are under user. Now, if there's an issue and you realize, well, they made a change here, maybe they don't understand something. That's what caused the error, the issue, the crash. Now you can go back and you can say, hey, all my users of this particular type under that role, I need to cover this particular training so everyone knows. So it's not about I got you. It's more of like, okay, I can see everybody's up to speed on what we're trying to accomplish here.
And not only can't users hide, but instruments can't hide anymore either.
Oh,
So now we could see specific logs for instruments. So if I was to go to my Biotech 406, for example, and click update, there we go. So
there we
now we
go.
can see that the type is instruments. And there's some users because the admin uninitialized the instrument or the admin uninitialized the instrument again. So, and we can see everything that the instrument has done. So we could see error states, we could see when it's running, what command has run, and we can see whether it's being actually utilized. So if I go to an underutilized instrument, like I believe my 40, my A4S, if I was to update that.
Not utilized at all in this, I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we can see that it basically just uninitialized it. So not much has happened there. So we can see that, if this, we could check for not only just one day, but we could, have this start months prior or years and see what are the utilizations for different instruments.
Yeah, I
And
think
we can see a lot more filtering based on properties here.
yeah, again, you think about you take the start stop times and you look at data as it maybe it was getting worse as a particular time went along, and you want to go back to a certain date and say, okay, it was good at this date. Then it started to drift at that particular date. Now you're starting to narrow things down a little bit without having to, if any of my viewers have gone through the Genera log files, they are intense and there's a lot of information. What this does is it acts like a giant filter to help you narrow down the issues that you're looking for, which is awesome.
Yep. And then, I want to briefly mention the application side of things because we could see levels here. And one that looks very appealing is the error level. So let's see if we could update. So we could just see the errors that has occurred to the system for the last day. And so here we go. So we can see that there is one error that has occurred on the
Great.
application level.
Awesome. Finally, we're going to get to Labware Importer API. This came about, again, because lots of all these things, these feature requests come about because a customer was wanting to import an entire XML document for all the labware that they wanted to put into the system. And then we have this class now that has been opened up in public. It was private previously, and now this has the capability to do so. And Igor's got a presentation here to show how that's going to work.
Yeah, before I go into the actual program, just to give a bit of context of what you're able to do with this labware importer in Genera inherently. So if you go to this labware section here, you can see you can remove all the labware, but you can also import and export. So when you export, it'll export it as an XML file, and it'll save all the positions of your labware in your workspace. And then when you save it, what you could do is now you could import your labware. So you could go here, select your labware, and you can see that here that instead of it being 0 out of 22 for my hotels 1, 2, 3, and now it's all filled up, which is a very nice feature because you could have, different processes have different labware XMLs and or different users having different, so you don't have to keep on adding labware manually. But what a customer has asked in the past is, why can't I do this within a process, right? Why do I have to manually click through import labware before starting my process? And so that's exactly why this import labware API was exposed to allow the customer to do this. So if we were to go to the import labware, so this is the program, and this is the labware importer, a class that was previously private, so it was only allowed to be done through the this labware importer functionality in Genera. But now you could create a program that does it for you. So if I was to run this, so if I was to schedule this, save, let me actually schedule this at the scheduler level. So I already ran it before, but you can see that there's 0 labware in my STX. Just rerun this. So it's going to ask you for your labware import file. And if I click finish, you could see that it added the labware.
So it's almost doing the same thing that you would have done in the labware import labware dialog, but now this is a program you can run in process.
So you could add it as a start handler, for example, so that when the process starts, you add your labware with this add labware from XML program, and then you continue on with the rest of your process.
Yeah, and in the context that we came about with this, or at least the customer asked about it, they needed different import labware configurations. I think it was probably the context. So with this, and like Igor just said, putting it in a handler, this allowed them to use it as a parameter and say, okay, this is the file that I'm going to run, and my labware is going to be in these locations. And another person who worked in the lab is going to have labware in these locations and run it that way. So it allowed them to select those files through the process of scheduling, as opposed to like we just showed, which it was originally only through the Genera interface, which is really, really helpful. All right, well, that covers the new features in 7.2. So that's all we have for this episode, and we will catch you on the next one.